see the screen on my side?
Yes, we can
If you
see.
can please, okay, you can see.
Yes.
Okay, so we are going to start with Lesedi Komani, plant tissues, right? So with plant tissues, we are going to look at cells and also where they come from and then how they um, multiply and form tissues and the types of tissues that they form and also their functions. So in this case, we know that cells are the basic unit of life. Without cells, humans wouldn't exist. Actually, nothing on this earth would exist without cells. Cells combine and group themselves into a certain tissue. And we can see this in such a way that an example would be if you have one learner, you have one cell, and if you have a group of learners, you have a tissue that is built up. And also, if you take that tissue and combine it with another tissue or other similar tissues, they will combine to form organs, and then those organs will also combine to form systems, and then those systems will combine to form a whole human being. So that's the anatomy of a human body. They originate from what? From cells to what? To systems. Am I understood?
Yes, ma'am.
So moving on. Okay. So we start from a cell, a single cell which multiplies during mitosis and meiosis to form what? To form tissues, right? To form a group of cells that will be called a tissue. And then from that tissue, we are going to multiply those tissues or a group of tissues that will group themselves into what? Into a organ. And then after that organ, we are going to have a what? A system, and that system will have a certain function which will form the what? The whole human body. So now we are going to break down those tissues into different categories and look at them, each of them, and what their functions are. So we have meristematic tissues, which are mainly for producing new cells for growth. So if you have a wound, or you've been, let's say you ride a bicycle and then you fall and then you hurt your knee and then you have an open wound. So we'll have meristematic tissues that will come in hand, and then they will come multiply, and then after multiplying, those cells will multiply, form so many meristematic tissues, and then those will close up your wound. If you have noticed that after a certain period of time, you will have a layer, a hard layer on that wound that will be healing the wound and closing it up. That means there will be tissues there that produce new cells for growth, meaning that the wound will be healed. So that's meristematic tissues. They produce new cells for growth, right? And also they may help in what? Growth of the bones, the human bones. As you know that your bones now are not similar to the bones that you had in size. They are not similar to the bones that you had when you were a baby. When you were a baby, your bones were also relative to the size of your body. So now in due time, the tissues, the cells, they reproduced, and then in due time they were forming new tissues that were growing and were stimulating growth in your cells and your bones. So that's why they grew, and now you have longer arms, you have longer legs, and also your skull is a bit longer, is a bit larger, and can contain the brain. And now we're going to move on to the epidermis, right? So I need you guys to understand that we have animals and plants, and animals and plants, they do not have the same, some of them do not have the same tissues, and plants have different tissues because of different parts of the plant. They perform different jobs. As we know that, as I've told you before, that tissues come together to form an organ, and then the organs come together to form the what? the systems. Those systems perform different functions. For example, in the human body, we have the excretory system, and then we also have the digestive system. When you eat food, the digestive system does its job, and also when you want to pass the food out, the excretion system does its job. So that's the same with plants. Each tissue has its own function. When there's a tissue assigned for delivering water, that tissue will deliver water. And when there's a tissue that is assigned for support, it will do just that. So I think that's explained. And so now we're going to move to an epidermis. So they're saying that epidermis protects the outer surface. So in a plant, you have a leaf. If you were to zoom into the leaf, a structure of a leaf, and you were to look at the outer layer is called the epidermis. It's on the surface, the outer surface of the plant skin, right? It protects the inner surface of the skin of the plant, right? It's for protection mainly. And then now we are going to look at the parenchyma. So they're saying that the parenchyma is mainly for storage. It may assist in photosynthesis. Is this visible? It is. In photosynthesis, whereby it stores what? It stores the food that is produced during photosynthesis. Again, we know that during photosynthesis, we are going to have the manufacturing of food by the plants. So now this is where parenchyma comes in and stores the food or stores the energy for that to take place, for photosynthesis to take place. Right. So now we're going to move to the collenchyma. So the collenchyma is mainly for flexible support so that the plant can bend easily. There are some plants out there, if you take them and then you try to break it, it doesn't break easily. It bends first without breaking. So it's flexible, right? So that's where the collenchyma comes in hand. It allows the branch to bend without breaking easily. So now we're going to look at the sclerenchyma. So the sclerenchyma and the collenchyma work hand in hand. You have to have support, right? And you have to have mechanical support, flexible support and mechanical support working together in order for the plant to what? To be strong enough. So for the sclerenchyma, we have strong mechanical support and strength. So there are some plants that when you try to break them, you can feel that they are hard or a bit difficult to break. So that's when the sclerenchyma, the tissue called the sclerenchyma, will be will be seen and will be taking place during what? Mechanical support. So there are some plants out there. It's both strong and bendable. That means that it cannot break easily, and it's also strong. It has strength, right? That's where you'll be seeing collenchyma and sclerenchyma working hand in hand. So now we're going to move on to the xylem and phloem. So they're saying that the xylem transports water and mineral salts. It's like a water pipe. So if you were to try to memorize this, right, for xylem and phloem, let's say we have a plant. We have planted it in the soil and it's rooted in the soil. So now you have the xylem, right, moving from the what? Moving from the roots towards the rest of the plants. So the xylem, you can memorize it this way. The xylem, whatever it transports, it moves away from the soil, right? It goes towards the rest of the plant. It moves away from the soil. And then with the phloem, you're going to say that it moves towards the what? The soil, from the leaves to other parts of the plants, right? You can say it moves towards the soil in this case. So if you see anything or any question related to water, the transportation of water and mineral salts, then you basically have to remember that that is the xylem. It transports water and mineral salts from the roots towards the rest of the plant. That's why I said you can easily say that the xylem, or for you to know or memorize it, you can say that the xylem transports water and minerals away from the what? From the soil towards the rest of the plants. But in this case, you have to specify, that's just for memorization. In this case, you have to specify from which part of the plant. So the part will be the what? The roots, this part, towards the rest of the plant, and especially the leaves. So the leaves and then the rest of the plant have to get water and mineral salts. I got we know that when you have planted a tree or a plant and then it's rooted in the soil, it has to be watered. It has to have manure in some cases. So you can see, Hore, we are adding that water to the what? To the roots. But now we have to have a pipeline that takes the what? The water towards the rest of the plant. You see. So that's where the what? The xylem comes in hand. It moves the what? The water and the mineral salts from the roots down there where we initially pour the water, right? Where the water gets inside the soil and towards the roots, and then it goes and moves up towards the what? The rest of the plant and the leaves. So without this xylem, we cannot have the process of photosynthesis because the plant will not be getting water and mineral salts. So for memorization, you can also say that the xylem is the plant water pipe, right? Like I said, it is the pipeline. It is where water and mineral salts move towards the rest of the plants and also the leaves. It moves away from the soil. And then we're going to also look at the phloem. With the phloem, I mentioned that for you to memorize it as well, you can also say that it moves the what? The food from the leaves, the upper part of the tree towards the lower part of the tree and to the rest of the tree or the plant. So you can easily say that it transports manufactured food from the leaves to other parts of the plant, right? And if you want to easily remember this, for phloem, they are not written the same way, but phloem and food sound more or less the same. So you can just say that there's phloem and then there's food. You see, phloem, food. So you can try to um, take the two and then put them in one sentence and know that when we talk about phloem, automatically you have what? You have food involved. And we talk about xylem, we have what? Water and mineral salts involved, right? So they're saying that phloem transport the food that is manufactured by the what? By the tree from the leaves towards the other plants, the other part of the plant. And memory, you can say it is the plant's food delivery system. Like most of you know, what's it this? The delivery guys for food. You can try to relate it to that. A real life example would be think of a building with water pipes and food deliveries, right? The building will have water pipes transporting water from what? From the pipes and underground to what? Towards the pipes in your in your houses or in your rooms or whatever that you use. And then there will be a person coming to deliver food in that house, and that person will be called the phloem, right? And then the pipes will be called the xylem. And then now we are going to have a few questions. Is there anyone who doesn't understand anything so far? Guys, is there anyone who doesn't understand? If you have a question, then you can ask the question.
Ma'am, we understand.
Or you understand everything?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now I'm going to move on to the activity. Let me just remove this. So the activity is mainly for you guys to practice with. You are just going to a screenshot this. Yes, and then you are going for so that we can move forward. And then if there's anything you don't understand, you guys will tell me because I need to move on to biomes now. So is it okay if I move on from this and then you will do the practice questions?
Ma'am, you can move.
So now, okay. So I'm going to move on to the tissues they firstly the first thing that we did is just a quick recap and a summary of what we did. We mentioned that the human body is mainly composed of what of cells, and also plants are composed of cells, which are what the basic unit of life, and each cell multiplies and they group themselves, and then that group of cells is what is then called a tissue, and then groups of tissues combine to also form what organs, and then those organs also combine to form what systems, and then those systems combine to form the human body. And then after that we also mentioned that each tissue in the plants and also in the human body performs different functions, and then those functions differ in such a way that the tissues also differ, so each tissue has its own function. We looked at the meristematic tissues, the epidermis, the xylem, the phloem, and also the what collenchyma, sclerenchyma. We looked at multiple tissues. We have the meristematic tissues that I gave you an example with bones and a healing wound, right? I gave you the epidermis, which does what? Which protects the plant or the outer skin, right? We also looked at the sclerenchyma and then the collenchyma and the parenchyma, right? The xylem and the phloem. And then we mentioned how those support a plant and also provide food towards the plants, and then how they provide water and mineral salts, and what provides those things as well. So now we are going to look into biomes. So, a biome is a large geographical area characterized by particular climatic conditions and the plants and animals adapted to those conditions. So now I need you guys to remember that we have different places on Earth, and then those different places have different climatic conditions, plants and animals. For example, you cannot live here and go to the Sahara Desert, and then when you get there, you find a mango tree, or you find a chicken there. It's not possible. So that means there are different places with different plants, different animals that are adapted to those places as well, and then also different climatic conditions. And as you know that when we talk about climatic conditions, they differ from weather conditions. Weather conditions, when we talk about them, we talk about the day-to-day changes in the atmospheric pressure or the atmospheric system or that. So now when we talk about climatic conditions, we talk about the long-term changes of the atmospheric conditions, right? Yes, that's the correct word. The atmospheric conditions. So now, if you go to the desert and then you look at the soil type, we mostly have a sand type of soil in the desert. And then you come here to South Africa where you live, in any place that you live here, and then you find that the soil is clay, and it also has different plants attached to it and different animals attached to it. So now you can see the difference between these two places, right? So we're going to look at the bigger picture, which is from biosphere to biome, from biome to ecosystem. So now these things, it starts from biosphere and then it also leads to organism. Just like how I explained with a cell, how it starts as a single cell and then it then multiplies into a whole different system to then building up the whole human body. So this is how it works. It's more or less the same thing. So one thing leads to another, and then that leads to another thing, just like that. So we have populations of animals which contain the same species. So when we talk about a population of animals, we are talking about um, we can have a population of people. They are the same species. We can have a population of lions. We can have a population of zebras living in the same in the same environment, right? And when we talk about communities, we talk about different populations, right, coming together into that same place. Do you understand that? I hope you do, because now they build up from one thing to the other. So the key idea is that different places have different climate, they have different soil and vegetation. When we say about vegetation, we are simply talking about the plant life there and the plant availability in that place. So now you can find that where we are right now, we have clay as the soil type. And then you go to another place, they have sand as the soil type. I get it, they are different. And then when you come to where we live, you can also find that there's high rainfall in that place. It's always raining throughout the year. And then in another place, it barely even rains. They experience drought mostly. And then you will see that there are different animals living in in those places that adapt to those certain conditions, weather conditions, and the vegetation. So rainfall and temperature affect which plants can survive, and the vegetation then influence which animals and other organisms can live there. If we have if we live in a place whereby there is low rainfall, for example, we know that we have fish in the sea, we have all that, we have the rivers and that contain fish in them that needs water survive, right? So if you see that there is a place that has a river, initially that has a river, and then the river contains fish in it, and then the area keeps experiencing drought and no rainfall or low rainfall throughout the year and high temperatures, which make it highly impossible for the fish to survive, then that means that the fish at some stage or the river might dry out and the fish might also be dead or no longer be there or go extinct. So that's what they mean when they say that rainfall and temperature affect which plants can survive, vegetation, and also the animals that can live there. So that means that initially the temperature and the rainfall, it was favorable for the fish to live in that place and have water and have a river. But now that there is no longer enough water and the temperature has risen above the normal temperature that has always been there, now the fish can no longer survive. And now it couldn't adapt to the new environmental change. So a real life example is that a very dry part of South Africa cannot support exactly the same vegetation and animals as a wetter region. Like I was saying right now, that if you go to the desert, it's close to impossible to find a chicken there, to find a domestic cat, to find a domestic dog, to find the things that you find here in South Africa where we live, this part of South Africa that we live in. You cannot go there and then find the same vegetation. For example, a mango tree, a banana tree. They have adapted to the weather conditions of of this region of South Africa. So now if you take a mango tree and plant it in that sandy soil and that hot climate and that type of soil that cannot retain a good amount of water for it to survive, how is it going to survive there? It will eventually die out. It will not be able to adapt, kind of like a human being. If we were to move from South Africa and go to live in the polar regions of or polar parts of the world, we will not be able to survive as well as those people who are already adapted to living in that place, because initially we were not living there. So we will have to undergo certain changes, and some of us, we will not be able to live there at all. Some people will die out because their bodies are not used to living in those conditions. I don't know if I make sense, but I tried to explain it as thorough as I could. So they're saying that different environmental conditions lead to different communities of organisms. Like I said, you can it's close to being impossible to finding a rattlesnake. I don't know if you guys know a rattlesnake. That's mostly or commonly found in a desert. It's close to being impossible to finding it here, whereby there is no desert. So we are going to look at the important concepts under this topic, which are biotic, abiotic, terrestrial, aquatic, ecosystem, producer, consumer, decomposer. So when we talk about biotic factors, we are talking about living parts of an environment. And I want to clarify something, that a plant is a biotic factor, because now you all know that a plant takes in what? Carbon dioxide and exudes what? Oxygen, right? During the process of photosynthesis. So you can see that a plant is alive. A plant is a living part of the environment. It breathes. It's just that we cannot see it, but it does breathe a certain type of gas, which is what? Carbon dioxide. So when we talk about microorganisms, we're talking about organisms that we cannot see with our naked eye. We have to use what? A microscope. And when we talk about macroorganisms, we talk about those organisms whereby we can see with our naked eyes. And then we also talk about under biotic factors, we also talk about plants and animals. We as humans are also part of the biotic factors because we are animals. We are living parts of an environment. So now we're going to look under abiotic factors. Abiotic factors are the exact opposite of biotic factors, which are the non-living factors. So if you look at your environment, right, it's composed of these things that they mentioned here. It's composed of water, like we know that Earth is composed of mainly 70% of the Earth is made up of water. So we know that 70% of Earth is made up of what? An abiotic factor, which is what? Water. And then also temperature, how hot, how cold, how cool, how warm our atmosphere is. And then light, the soil, the wind, and the gases. That's the what? The factor that is non-living, that's not alive, right? So now we're going to look at terrestrial and aquatic. So I would suggest that when writing these things, when writing them down and taking notes, for each part, do a table, make a table, and then after making a table, write biotic on one side. Let's say you write biotic here on the side, on the side of the concepts, and then you write abiotic factors on the side of easy explanations, and then you write, yes, you write abiotic factors here. And then under the biotic factors, you mention what biotic factors means, and then its examples. You do the same with the abiotic factors this side. You write down the explanation and then its examples. And then after that, you write a table again. You write terrestrial biomes, this side of the concept, and then you write what? Aquatic biomes on this side. And then you do what? You write the explanations and what the the examples. So now moving on, we have terrestrial biomes, which is a land-based biome. So when we talk about a land-based biome, we are simply talking about a biome that is situated on soil, the land. It has nothing to do with water. We have living organisms on land, and we also have living organisms on what? Under the sea or under the water. And when we go back to the explanation or the definition of a biome, we said that it is a large geographical area that is characterized by its climatic conditions, the plants and the animals adapted to the condition. Right? So in a terrestrial biome, a terrestrial biome, we're talking about the land-based one, right? So we are going to find plants that are like a mango tree. That is the one that I commonly use because you all know that. A mango tree, an apple tree, animals such as cows, donkeys, and also sheep, cat, what's it called? Pigs and all that. They are found on land, right? And also um the plant, the animals, right, I mentioned those, and then the plants I also mentioned those. They are found on land, and then they are also adapted to the climatic conditions that are on land. You can never see a mango plant or tree underwater. That's highly impossible. You can never see a mango tree in the sea or the ocean, and you also can never see a cow living in the ocean. That's not an aquatic what? An aquatic animal. It doesn't live in the sea. So that means they have already adapted to the what? The conditions on land. They are called terrestrial um, animals or terrestrial plants. And that is classified by what? Terrestrial biomes, right? And now we're going to look at the aquatic. That is totally a different one. That one talks about a water-based biome, which means we are now going to look at the creatures that are in the sea, the dams, the rivers, the ocean, and just life underwater. Yes, you can say life underwater. So now we're going to look at fish. We're going to look at seaweeds. You can never see a seaweeds on land. It's not possible, and you can never see an octopus walking on land. That's a terrestrial animal. And we have fish. You can never see a fish on land. That's a what? An aquatic animal. It's adapted to the conditions of living underwater, and is adapted to the conditions of breathing, being able to breathe underwater. So that's why I said that you can never see a cow living underwater, and you cannot see a fish living on land. So that's why we have aquatic biome, an aquatic biome, which is a water-based biome. And now we're going to move on to an ecosystem. So an ecosystem is a organisms interacting with one another and with the non-living environment. So an ecosystem simply involves what we are doing now. So us as human beings, we are organisms and we are interacting with one another. We interact with other organisms, which are other animals and other human beings. And we are also interacting with the environment that we live in. For example, we use the environment to plant trees, to plant vegetables that we eat, right? And we also breathe in the air. So if you go back to biotic and abiotic factors, you will realize that in an ecosystem, both the biotic and abiotic factors do what? Interact with one another, and they are connected in such a way that one cannot live without the other. Now, we cannot live on Earth and not breathe in the gases that are on Earth. We cannot. we cannot live on earth and not breathe in air, like I said, the gases. So now if you classify us, we are the biotic factors. And then if you classify the gases or the air that we breathe in, it falls under the abiotic factors, right? And you cannot live in a place whereby the temperature is not favorable for you, right? You cannot go to a place that is way hotter than the amount of temperature your body is supposed to have. So you will not be able to survive in that place, right? So now we are going to look at producers. Producers are an organism or organisms such as a green plant that makes its own food. A producer is simply something that can manufacture or make its own food, kind of like plants, right? For example, plants manufacture their own food through the process of photosynthesis. And then when we look at consumers, we are consumers because after producers make their own food, we go ahead and then eat that food. So now we are what? Consumers that obtain food by consuming other organisms. We can consume other organisms like the food that is produced by other plants or other animals. You know that we eat chicken, we eat beef, we eat pork, and all those other things. So and also other animals are what are consumers, kind of like a lion eats other animals and it's what it's a consumer. And then we are also going to look at a decomposer. A decomposer is something that breaks down dead organic matter. So if you were to see a dead animal today on the road, and then tomorrow you go, and then as time goes on you check up on that animal that's dead on the road, on the side of the road. Normally it smells horrible, and it will disappear as time goes on. It's not necessarily disappearing, but it's being decomposed, right? It's been broken down by dead organic matter, right? So now you will see maggots, or those I don't know what you guys call them, but they're called maggots. They feed on that dead animal or dead organic matter. And then as time goes on, it does what? It will form what's it called? It may form coal as well and other things. That's another different topic. So yes, and then we have food relationships. So now, when we talk about food relationships, if you look at it, we have a relationship with the environment, right? Like I said, the ecosystem. So we plant a tree, and after planting a tree, let's say we plant what's it called? A mango tree. Like I normally use mango tree as an example. You plant a mango tree, it grows, and then after it has grown, it contains energy. And then that energy that is contained in that mango tree, or that mango that it has been manufactured by the plant through the process of photosynthesis, we go and we consume that what's it called? A mango. Or we take those mangoes, we feed them to the what? To our pigs. Let's say we have a pig farm, right? We continuously feed the pigs with what? The mangoes. And then the pigs now have the energy that they received from the mangoes. And then now we come along and then we take the pig, we slaughter it and we eat it, right? So now we are consuming the food, right? So now when we're consuming that energy, it mainly came from what? From the mango tree. And then the mango tree got its energy from the sun through the process of photosynthesis. So it's just what you see here. So they're saying that we have the grass, right? When we have the grass, we're going to have a grasshopper, which is the grass, right? And then it now has the energy that it has received from the grass. And then after that, we have the frog coming along. It is the what? It is the grasshopper. And it now contains the energy from what? From the grasshopper, right? And then now we have a snake coming along to eat the what? The frog. The frog, it got its energy from what? The grasshopper. And now the energy has its energy from the frog. So this cannot happen. So we cannot have a snake without having the what? The grass. If you look at it, if we didn't have the grass, what would the grasshopper eat? And what would the frog eat? And also, what would the snake eat? Because now, if there is no grass to eat, the grasshopper may die out because they wouldn't have any other source of food to have. And then if we don't have the grasshopper, the frog would also notice if the grasshopper is the only source of food that it has. So that's just the relationship that we have with our environment, right? We have with our environment and our non-living or um, biotic factors. So now after the snake has eaten all these, right, has eaten the frog, it will now die. And after it's dead, it will decompose and go back to the earth and act as what? Manure, right? And after it has acted as manure, the soil will become fertile and have enough factors to do what? To grow a plant on. So now if you plant a tree on it again or grass grow on manure or the dead organic matter, it will now contain energy, and then that energy will be consumed what by the grasshopper. That's the relationship they have from one thing to another, and then it's a cycle. So if I were you when writing this, let's say they have given me um different types of animals, then they want me to put them in an order that they make a food chain. I would put the grass first, and then an arrow, put the grasshopper, right? And then also an arrow, put the frog, and then after putting the frog, a snake here, and then after the snake, it dies out and it goes back to the what? Grass. The energy goes back to grass. So that's the cycle biotic environment, right? And our abiotic factors, which are the soil involved and the gases that are involved, as well as the water and temperature. So this is also another activity that you have to do. So you can just let me do this. You can just take a picture of that and then you're going to practice it on your own. So is everything okay? Did you guys understand? Is everything okay? Did you understand the whole thing that I explained?
Yes, we understood.
Okay, do you have any question?
No,
Okay, then
thank
no
you.
problem. The lesson is over. It's done now. You can exit if you want to. Did you